Hello, I'm Shane from Thrive Themes and welcome to another landing page from scratch video. So today you're going to see how a landing page is built starting from scratch, step by step and in real time. Here is what the page looks like. We have also made this page available as a template in Thrive Architect, and we've created several other pages that you can use as a whole set to create a funnel of pages all in this style. Now there are several reasons why we're doing a landing page from scratch video for this specific landing page. First of all, it continues our theme of no Photoshop needed. So even though this is a very stylishly designed page and it has many elements that you might think you'd have to open up Photoshop and do some photo editing there and then upload that as an image to your site. Actually, everything you see here, except for the photographs obviously, is created and styled directly within Thrive Architect. And secondly, this is a very complex and advanced layout. Basically, every section on this page has something interesting or special going on. So as you see me build this page, you'll see various different tricks and maybe less obvious features and combinations of different features in Thrive Architect. And I think if you see how this is used, it can really inspire you to build your own interesting layouts, and you can learn a few things that you probably didn't know about Thrive Architect yet. So with that said, let's get right into it and start building the page. I've got Thrive Architect loaded up on a page here. I'll go to page setup and I'll choose the blank landing page. So I'll choose the blank page because we're just going to build this whole thing from scratch. And as usual, I'm going to start with some preparation work, which involves the following things. Let's go to the page setup, page settings here. On the landing page, I'm going to make this full width. I'm going to use page sections because so many parts of the landing page are full width anyway. I'm just going to use page sections. And I'm going to create my default page section, which I'll give a width of 1180. That's going to be my default width. And I'm going to give it inside padding of 20 at full view, at the largest size. And right away, I'm going to go into mobile and reduce that to 10. So you've seen me maybe talk about this before. This is my 20-10 rule, right? 20 pixel padding on large screens, 10 pixel padding on small screens. It's something I like to work with. I'll put my heading in this section and I'll select the section, because another thing I'll do, I want to show you the effect of this. The heading has a bottom margin here that comes from the theme, and I can override that by selecting the section, going into advanced typography. I can set all of these values here to 0. And that means that the theme margins on the text are overwritten and I can set my own. And this is something I definitely want to do. And then I'll move my heading outside the section again. All right, so now we've got a default background section that I can work with. Then let's do our heading actually. So in the landing page settings, we shall set up our fonts. Starting with a paragraph, we'll make that hind 23, 40, and the color. Now here, the thing about the color picker, it actually accepts quite a lot of different ways of input. So if I do 666 here and I tab out of it, it automatically sets itself to this hash of 6 times 6. So you can do the same thing with any color that has the same number, same character over and over. You have to enter it only 3 times, and that applies the color. So I'll save that. Then our first heading is going to be the Laura font. We have 50, line height 60. Here the color is going to be 333. There we go. Then I will apply this same font to all headings. And on the heading 2, I'll change the color and the size. And on our heading 3, I'm actually going to use the other font, the same one that I use for paragraphs. I'm going to use this one instead. I'll use the same color as heading 2 and also modify the size. Okay, so that gives us our basic setup right there. And I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm just going to duplicate this section a couple of times. So this is what we will start working with. Now, our very first section is kind of the most generic one here. It's the least interesting one. What I also prepared here is I have a folder with all of my image files that I need. So I have my logo right here. we are going to have it left aligned. And so we have in this section, we have our logo and we have some text over here, which is our menu, where we have, say, home, about, blog, and I will make this a bit darker and I'll make it smaller as well. And I'll make it uppercase. Then I will, let's go in line here and right align it. Now what I'll actually do is I will drag this next to the image. So we have columns right here. Then I will remove the margins from here. I'll make sure that there's no margins here either. Because then what I want to do is on the columns that I'll select through the breadcrumbs, I want it to be vertically aligned so that these are nicely on the same line. And what I can do then is I can choose the columns and I can change the height of the columns, and both of these will always be center aligned. And so I'll choose a height of about 50 or so. I want this to be relatively thin still. Now let's get into some of the more interesting stuff. On the next section, we're going to give this a background image. So we'll go to background, choose image, and here we've got this background image, which we'll set into the post, and I'll add some more stuff later. So for now, I might revisit this later, but for now I'll just leave it. Then we want to add our first heading. This will be our main heading on the page. Oh, I should have made that a heading, but we can always use the text element for headings as well, so it doesn't really matter. And okay, so we have some text here. And one thing we're going to do here to make this look a bit more interesting is I'm going to choose the first two words here, and I'll change the font just on those. So there's a font here called, Great Vibes. That's like kind of like a handwritten font. This is what I want to apply here. And I think, yeah, just like this, that looks pretty good. So that just gives it a bit of a flair, right? First two words are written slightly differently from the rest. Then we've got a bit of text below this. And I'll just put some filler text here, and I'll make this darker. So this is darker than our usual paragraph text, like this. Now I'm going to add a button here, and this will be important because, let me align this here to the left, because I'll use this button in more than one place. So I'm going to style this button now, and then I'm going to save it so I can reuse it. So where do we start? Let's make it larger, like this, or maybe like this. Actually, I like this better. And I'll give it a different color. Now this is a color I'm probably going to use again, so I'll save it to my palette here, to my custom palette. Now before we tweak the size here, I'm going to change the text. I'm going to change the text to get the free guide, something like that. And then I'll choose the button again and go into typography, make some changes there. So I want this larger. I want more text, letter spacing, something like this. And also I want to use a different font here. So I'm going to use the same font that I use for my paragraph. And white is good. The font size is a bit strange here. Let's make that maybe 24. All right, so that's my text setting here. Button width, I definitely want this button to be wider, maybe like this. And I also want it to be taller. And the way I do that is I add padding at the top and bottom. So if I add, let's say 10 pixel padding, now that's not enough yet. So let's add 20 and see what that does. There we go. So then it starts changing the height of the button. So something like this looks good to me. I also want a hover effect. And I'll keep this really simple. So I change the state to hover, and I simply change the button color to black. And exit, and so that's our hover effect. So this is my button. Let me save this as a template. So I'll go down to Styles and Templates and save it. I'll just call it Chic Button. I have a button category, so I'll put it in there and then save that. So this button is now ready for me to be reused in other places. Next up, I want to put an image next to all this. So here's what I'll do. I'll just drag an image next to one of these elements here. And this is the image I want to use. I'll have it center aligned, put it here. And then I'll just put the other, so this creates my column layout. I'll just put the other two things in the other half of the column here. Then we want to resize that to something like this. And then I want to do a couple of things. First of all, I want to change the spacing here a bit. I want to give this stuff more room to breathe. So add a bit of padding to the top of this section here. Definitely want more space at the bottom of the text here, and also at the bottom of this text here. And I'll just eyeball it now. It's not that important what exactly it looks like. The other thing I want to do, let me select the columns and get rid of some of the space here. That's 0. The other thing I want to do is I want to create an overlap effect. What I'll do right away for this is I'll select this section down here and I'll add some top padding, let's say 100 pixels, right away to compensate, because I'm going to push this image down by giving it a negative bottom margin. And I basically preventatively selected this section here and added some space to compensate for this, right? For this difference. So this looks quite nice. Now, as you can see, something that happens actually here is that as we do this, the space between the bottom of the button and the bottom of the section shrinks, right? And so here, that's something I want to compensate as well. I want to have this overlap on the image, but I do want to have a bit more space here. So I'll increase this to maybe 40. That looks nicer to me. So as you can see right now, also the text here isn't very readable. It looks a bit messy. So we'll add an overlay over this background. So I choose the background section. And what we'll do is we'll add a gradient on top of the image. And now here comes one of the interesting effects you can do with gradients. I'll choose the first point in the gradient. I give it this color, and I'll save this color as well because I'll probably need it again. And okay, that's my first position. My last position is indeed black, but I want this to be transparent. So let's say 25. I want this to be slightly transparent, maybe 95. And now, okay, right now, this doesn't look very good. What can we do? What we can do is we can add 2 more points to this gradient. 1, 2. Now, let me select the first point again here. I want to get this color again and add it here. So this has the exact same color, 95. And this point here is black, 25. So again, this is the same color as the one right on the outer edge. And then what I want to do is I want to push both of these. So let me decide where I want this cutoff to be, somewhere over here maybe. And I want to push both of these markers here onto the same spot. And once that happens, just went past it there. There we go. Once that happens, it doesn't look like a gradient anymore. We actually have a perfect dividing line here. And then what's also very cool is that we can manipulate this here to create an interesting effect. So this is a real shortcut to creating such an effect as we have here. You could also build this with boxes and side decorations and stuff, but this is way shorter. It's way easier to do it like this using a gradient. And the key to making this work is that the 2 points here, the 2 points that define the border between these 2 colors, need to be on the exact same spot, like this. Now, another thing I want to do here is, let me select this. I think this should be darker, maybe even darker than that, like this. I think that looks a bit better. But there you go. That's our top section with some interesting overlap effects right away. All right, next up, I'm going to move into the next section, and this is just a text section. Just drop some text in here. I'll duplicate that and add some more text. Then let me make this a bit darker and also add some bottom margin, oops, like this. And this here, I want to make it a bit smaller, maybe like this. And then the line height I'll adjust as well. And now something I don't like here is how long this text runs. So what I'll do is on this section, I'll use this section here for this text only, and I can reduce the width here to maybe 900. So that becomes a bit more readable. I'll also add a bit more padding here, give it a bit more space to breathe. Then let's also add like 50 padding at the bottom. So this is our section here for the text. Let me make some more of these background sections. Next up, we have a colored background section which I'll use this saved color here. And we want to put a heading 2 in here. So I'll change that to heading 2. I want it to be center aligned. And this is the benefits section. And then let's emphasize one of these words. I'll apply this darker color. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe it needs to be a little darker. I'll save that as well. So we have a slightly darker shade of this as well. Then same thing, let's just let's add 50 pixel top padding here. And then let's put a little divider line below this text right here. And I want this to have the same color as our emphasized word here. Maybe be 2 pixels tall, and I want it to be a lot less wide. I want it to be just like a little line like this. Maybe a bit more, let's say 100 pixels. And a little less space around it, maybe like this. Now, that actually stands out too much to me. So what I'll do is I'll just reduce the opacity, make it a bit more subtle. And now we're going to use a similar trick that we did before up here to make an interesting looking effect here on the background. First, let's drop some more text in here. I think I'll use this here. Let me just duplicate this, put it in here. And I want to center align it, reduce the width, and I'll use 900 again as my width for text. So because generally if we have consistent widths, that will look better than if I just adjust it to some random value that's going to be different than the one before. So I'm going to use, when in doubt, I'm going to use the same amount. It's too much. Okay, so maybe like this. I think we could also use a bit more space at the bottom here. Okay, so next we'll have an interesting layout right here. What I'll do first is I'll make the next section here the same color as the one above it. Then I'll put a content box inside it. So I drop a content box inside here, and I'll make the background of this content box white. And this will contain a little feature grid that we're about to build right now. What I want to have in here right away, I'll start with some layouts. I want to have 2 columns. And inside each of these, I want to have another 2 columns. Something like this. Probably move this over a little bit. Okay, and here, so the layout we'll have here is image. In here, this is our first image. This image will be, I'll give it rounded corners until it's entirely round. I'll remove the spacing around the image here. Actually, I'll keep the bottom one, but not the top one, because I want the top to align with the next piece of text in here, which is going to be a heading 3. This is our benefit, heading 1. Make that bold. Then we will have some text underneath it, and I'll make this quite a lot smaller. I want to really like de-emphasize this text here. Took that a bit far, but something like this. And then let me actually duplicate this, add a bit of space here, and then we'll just have like read more. And this we could link up to, if we wanted to, we could link this up to some benefit section or some separate page if we wanted to advertise some specific benefit or feature. We could link this up. But this is our basic layout. Now, one more thing, I want to have some space here. So what I'll do is on the content box, I'll add, I'll link these sides together like this. I'll add something like 30 pixels padding. I'm wondering if that's the right amount. If I do that, I want to make sure that I'll remove the padding on the columns. We don't want to have multiple, basically, we don't want to have multiple sets of padding stacking inside of each other. I'd rather have one set of padding outside. And this takes care of the image sticking too close to the side here. That didn't look very nice. So I want to have the same layout over here. So I'll select something inside this, I'll select the columns, this little columns container. And I think we can also get rid of this while we're at it. Okay. Okay, so I'll select this, duplicate it, and drop one of them over here. So let's look at what this looks like. I think what we should do is we should make this smaller. Let's reduce that to maybe 160. Let's try that, 160. Now here comes one of the rules for responsiveness. Before we duplicate this, which there's more to duplicate here because I want 2 rows of this, but before I do anything else, I want to check the responsiveness of this. So this is what it looks like on a tablet, where right away, I think that's okay if on the content box, if I reduce, I can give it a bit more space like this. So I think that's okay. And then on mobile, let's see what that looks like. Here, let's select this set of columns, give it a bit of space at the bottom, maybe even more, 30. And I'll do the same here. And then also, I think it would look nicer, let's see. Let me go to column. Maybe it'd look nicer if this was center aligned. So on the column level, on the container level, I'm going to center align the text. I think that looks a bit better. Let's do that. So here's the same thing on the column level, center align. And any style changes I make over here will apply only to the size I'm currently editing. So this looks okay. So now I've made this responsive. Now what I'd also do is change the image here, and then I can select not this columns container, but the next one, right? The columns that contain both of the column layouts, and I can duplicate this. And then here, right away, I can see we also have the spacing thing, so I can add 30 or so. Actually, it probably should be more than that, maybe 60 below here. And then also replace these images. And now to make this look a bit more interesting, we've got our benefits layout here. To make this look just a bit more interesting, I'm going to select this background section here again. And I'm going to use the same kind of gradient trick that we used before. So I'm going to have this right here. I'm going to have a second point with the same color. And on the other side, I'm going to do white. So I'm going to do all white. And a second point that is also all white. And then I'm going to push the 2 points in the middle together. Here, they don't have to be exactly on the same spot because we can't really see the border anyway. But what this creates, if I apply this and click outside of it, you can see it creates this nice asymmetrical kind of effect. And again, the cool thing about using the gradient trick for this is that we don't have to have any kind of negative margins and adjust the margins on all other views and so on. It creates this effect in a very simple and elegant way. Then let me select the next background section. And once again, I'll add some top spacing here. Because to further make this interesting, I'm going to select this content box and give it a negative bottom margin of, let's say, 120. So this just further creates like this asymmetric kind of magazine layout style look. And once again, you can see it's actually a very simple effect. All right, next up, we have a quote section. And we're gonna use an effect here that basically uses 2 different layers of background images, if you will. So we'll start with the first one. We'll select this background section and we'll add a background image. And we've got this one here. So we insert it like this. And I think maybe we can use this one unmanipulated. I think I'll center align it though. So, and I might put an overlay on this. Actually, let's put an overlay on this and maybe I'll change my mind later. I'll put a bit of an overlay on this like this maybe. And then inside the background section, I'm going to add a content box. And I want this content box to have a different background image. So here, again, I give it a background image and I upload a different image. And again, I think centered is probably best. And again, I'm going to add a semi-transparent black overlay here. And that's going to be to make the text more readable. So our text, let's put in some text. Our text is going to be, again, I'll just use some filler text. I will center align it. Oops, that was the wrong one. Center align it, and then we want to style it. So I'm going to use this color here that we've saved, and I also want to use the title font. This looks nicer for something like a quote, so I want to use that here instead. I also want to make the whole thing italic, actually, like this. And I want to change the size. I want to make it larger, maybe like this. Like this. And then we also want more space here. So I'm going to choose the content box. I definitely want like a lot of space at the top and bottom, maybe 80 pixels each. And then I also want to have some more space on the side. So maybe we'll do something like 30 on the sides. I'm not quite happy with this yet. So actually, let's keep the alignment like this. Let's make this a bit smaller, but more space in between. I basically just want to give this more space here. I think I'll go with 100 pixels top and bottom. Really want to give this some space to breathe here. I want to make the background here on the content box, I want to make that darker actually. Let me set this to maybe 70% to really emphasize the text here. And another thing I want to do is let's select this background section, and I'll choose the image and I'll make it static. So then it'll be an interesting effect here because the background scrolls and the overlay doesn't. All right, next up, we're actually going to skip these background sections. We're going to use something different. We're going to put a column in here, and that is, hold on, I'll make the column. I wanted it to be outside of this box, like this. And this column, because I want the column to go full width like it does now. That's why I put it outside of the section that I usually use. I want it to have no space in between. And I wanted to have no space at the top or bottom. So essentially I wanted to act like a background section, and I'm going to use it to make a split background. Quite simply, I'm going to choose this column over here. I'm going to make it this shade here. And now maybe if you're thinking that, hey, I could use the gradient trick again. That's true. I could basically use the gradient trick to get the same result. The main difference between using the gradient trick that we've used here and at the top and using columns is that the columns will stack on top of each other on smaller screens. And that's the effect I'm going for here. Now inside this, on the left side, we'll have an image. Let me drop an image in here. I'm gonna go like this, and I'll manipulate this image a bit more later. I'll put some content in the other half first. We will start with, and what I'll do first, actually, I'll put a content box in here because right now this column spans all the way to the edge of the screen. I don't want that. I want all the content in here to be restricted. So I put a content box inside. Here I can then change the width of this. And I want it to be restricted to basically this kind of width, right? Like we have here. So that's, let's say 820 pixels, something like that. So, and then I also wanted to have space from this border. I don't want text to stick right to this border here. So I'll add, I don't know, something like 60 pixel padding or so to this side, and probably have to tweak that some more later, but that's what we'll start with. Put a heading in here. That's going to be a heading 3. And, you know, this is some benefit-driven heading. And then what else do we do? Go like this, make it bold. And you know what? I think this could also use a bit of letter spacing. Then let's get some filler text. You'll notice that because this is outside of the section I created, the theme's default spacing here is back. And I don't mind in this case. This kind of spacing is actually fine, so I'm not going to change that. Then let's do a button. And this is going to be a different button than the one I already saved. So I'm going to build one from scratch, basically. Here we might want this to be small. I also want it to be left aligned. And let's just have some text like read more. What it does have in common though, I also want to use the hind font here as we've used before. I'll make it a little larger, like this, I think is good. And I want to make this button, I want to make it like a ghost button style. So what we'll do here is the button color is going to be white. Or transparent. Maybe I should make it transparent actually. I should make it transparent so that if I move it onto a different background other than white, it still looks as expected. And instead, so what we'll need is the text color. The text will have a color that is not white. The text will have probably this color. And the button will have a border. So we'll give it a 1 pixel border with this color as well, like this. And I also want an icon in here. I want the icon to be on the right, and I want the icon, so I'll click on the icon to edit the icon itself. I want this to be a left pointing arrow, no, a right pointing arrow. This one looks good, the long one. And let's make it a little larger, not too large, but yeah, that's definitely too large. Hold on, let's say 20 maybe, I think is good. And I think that's fine. So now to complete the ghost button effect, I will go into the hover state. And here what we want to do is, first of all, the button itself, we want to fill with this color. And then the text will change to white. So we have this effect. That looks pretty good. Now let's look at some spacing stuff. I want there to be more room to breathe again, kind of. That's a typical thing that you've seen me do here basically, is I'm always looking to give things nicer spacing, and here this is looking pretty cramped right now. One of the first things I want to do is I want to go to the columns and I want to vertically center align the content. And so that the image and the content block over here are center aligned. I want to remove a bit of space at the top here, actually. I think this looks better. And I want more space at the top and bottom of the image. There's several ways I can do that. I think I should do it on the column with padding. I could also add margin to the image, basically the same effect. I'm not entirely sure actually if there's a, any difference that matters between adding margin here or adding padding on the container. Now, another thing I want to do is I want to push the image over here to overlap this border. And first of all, I think it's too large right now. Let's reduce it to a smaller size. And then let's align it to the right here. Now I want to move it a bit further over. And I can do that like this, for example. Let's make a greater overlap here, maybe even more than that. And then all I have to do on the content box over here, I have to increase this side padding to compensate for it. Let me see, I'll click outside. Okay, so it seems like that seems like a pretty good composition. That looks nice. Now I want to have the similar thing, I like a zigzag, right? I want to have a similar layout, but with everything mirrored on the next section. And before I do that, I want to check the responsiveness again. So see what this looks like on a smaller screen. And okay, so what we can see here is that now the text is taking up more space, and we should have, I think on this column, we should have some padding here at the top and bottom, so this doesn't start looking cramped on this side over here. Apart from that, I think this still works. We should have on this column, let's also put some padding on this side here, so that the text doesn't run all the way to the edge on this side. But apart from that, I think this looks good. So mobile, this will be more interesting. Here, we definitely have to change some stuff. So it stacks on the mobile view, which is good. But we want to change some stuff. So first of all, let's remove the bottom padding here and center align the image, and maybe also make it smaller. I think this would be a good, makes sense to make it smaller. And I could do the overlap like this now, right? You could overlap the bottom instead of the side, which means that I'll choose the content box here and I'll change the way this content box is done. So I'll remove this side padding, and instead on the column, let's let's do 10 and 10 on the sides, like this. And let me select the content box again and push that down, like this. I think that's a pretty good mobile reimagining here of this layout. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so that's our responsiveness taken care of. And then let me select the columns, the major column layout here, duplicate that. And on the duplicate, select the columns and reverse the order. So with that, we've already done a decent job, let's say, of replicating what we want here. And we have to just make some changes. So here, this is going to be the other way around. So we'll have -70 on the other side. I'll also replace this image while I'm at it. I'll change the size here again to 380. Okay, and then we also have to apply some changes to this content box, because this is set to compensate here on this side for an image that no longer overlaps on this side. So the padding of 120 should be, or 121, I guess, if we're going to be exact, should be on this side. The alignment of the box should be on the right. Okay, so while this box here is oriented towards the left, this one here is oriented towards the right. And I think that might be it. We will have to, because we changed some of the alignment stuff here, we'll have to go in and make the changes again. So here on the column, we'll add the 20 on this side. And then on the mobile view, we'll have to add some tweaks as well. In fact, so what we're going to do on the mobile view, this is fine actually. What we want to do here is definitely remove this like we did before. And on the columns, on these columns, we want to unreverse the order. So on the mobile view, we have image on top, text below in both cases. And I think that's it. So then we have the next interesting bit of layout right here on the page. All right, next up, we're going to do a testimonial section. And I'm going to borrow something we've already created here. I want this, actually, let me just duplicate this section. I think that's the fastest way to do it, because I want to have the same title and the same divider that we have here. Except that here, the title is going to be something like what others are saying. And I'll do the last word emphasized again like this. And the border is going to be the same. And we're going to have a background image instead of the color. In fact, the color, I'll make it more like a dark gray. And then put an image on top of that, which is going to be this one. And alignment-wise, maybe we want center again. Just always going with the center here, I have to say. I'm not putting a lot of thought into that, to be quite honest with you. Okay, and then we want an overlay on this image. And what I want is, I don't want it to be all the way black. I want it to be like a bit more grayish and a bit warmer. So I'm pulling it towards red here. And then, you know, some level of transparency. And I'm going to change the text here to white. Like this. So as you can see now, the white is pretty good to read here. So I'm going to change the color of this to basically like a lighter shade of itself. And then do the same here on this divider. So I'll make it this color and make it 50% again. Now here we're going to do testimonials. Let's get rid of this. And instead we're going to do 3 columns. I want to have like a 3-column layout with testimonials. And so we could insert a testimonial element. We could use Thrive Ovation to insert this. That would actually be, you know, the way I'd recommend doing it. But I also want to show you how you can build it from scratch if that's what you want. I will once again remove the space here around the columns, because I'll take the space. I'll take care of spacing in other ways. And I'm going to put a content box in the first column, and I'll show you why once we've built this first testimonial here. What I'll do right away is I'll give it a background color, which is, let's say, 90% black, or yeah, almost entirely black, I think is good. Then I'm going to start with, I'll put some text in here. And actually I'll select the content box, go into typography and set it to white, because I think I'm going to have all the text in here be white. So then let's select this text again, and I'll make this a open quote. And I'll make it larger, and maybe even larger than that. Yeah, like that. And then let's get the content box again and give the content box some inside padding. Then after this open quote, so one of the problems with using an open quote like this, it's great that we don't load an image or even an icon or anything. We're just using text for this, but we're using it as a visual element. But as you can see, it takes up a lot of space here. So what can we do about that? Well, we could reduce the line height to 0, or something close to 0. But then it gets pushed up here. It's not ideal, really. Another thing we can do is we can give it an absolute position. So in the advanced position options, we can give it absolute position of just top left, like this. So there's more than one way to do this. Another way we could try here, and this is the kind of thing where I often just do trial and error to find out what might work best in a situation. So another thing we can try here actually is to set the line height to pixels. That gives us a bit more like granular control. Make that really small, but not quite 0. If it's 0, it gets a bit more difficult to select. And then just push it down like this maybe. So by giving it the top margin, I'm moving it down here again. Actually, I think maybe the size, I'll reduce the size by a bit. Maybe like this, and then tweak it a bit. So I think now it's starting to look pretty decent. Okay, below this I want a divider line. So we'll drop this in here. This divider, I want it to be a thinking of this as like a slightly warmer white. Like this, and I'll make it 1 pixel wide, and I'm actually going to make it like mostly transparent like this. I'm going to remove the top spacing here because it's already being pushed down because of the line height of this. So what we can then do, well, we could select this again, and we could maybe give it a negative margin to move these closer together. So there we have the top bit. Then I'm just going to drop some filler text in here below the divider. And it's too large again, so I'm going to go for, I've always used 19 pixels as a smaller font size. So I'm going to keep that consistent and use 19 as well here. Then I'll duplicate this divider. I want to have another divider below this. And here I'll want to change a few things about it. So I think I want to give it maybe a bit of space at the top. Basically want, I guess 20 is decent. I want the top and bottom spacing here to be similar, right? Between the text and the divider. So I think that looks good. Then we have another bit of text here, which is basically author name. And we're going to make that look a bit more interesting. I'm going to use my decorative font here, which has been the Laura font. And I'm going to give it a color. And I think it's too large, so a bit too large. So let's see what it looks like at 19 actually. So I might make it a little larger than the text above here, so like this. And then I'm going to duplicate this, drop it below, and this would be the description, a job description or something of this person. So those are like the typical elements we have in a testimonial, right? We've got the text, we've got a name, and then who they are, what they do. Okay, I think that's pretty good as a testimonial. And what I'll do then is I'll duplicate this and put it in the second column, duplicate it, put it in the third column. This is why I put it in a content box, because a content box I can select the whole thing and duplicate it And that's the fastest way to go from 1 to 3 testimonials, basically. I want to give this a bit more space to continue that kind of theme. I think maybe 60 top and bottom would be nice here. Gives this a bit more space. That looks pretty good. So there's our testimonial section. Next up, to mix things up a little, I'm actually going to grab this section again, duplicate it, and just make a simple text section after this one. And I'm going to give this a white background. Very simple. And again, I think it just needs more space around stuff, maybe even more here, to really give it a bit of room to breathe, right? And a way of thinking here is that if we have a lot of images, you want to make sure that it's not like back-to-back background images. That can make the page feel very heavy. So after having used quite a lot of images here, I think it's a good idea to just have some white space here to give the visitor kind of a visual break as they come through the page. Now we're going to do a classic split layout, if you will, so we're going to use images. So after this kind of visual break here with a bit of white space, we're going to do a split layout. So the way to do that is you drop the columns in here. And by the way, if you don't have a full width page like I do, you can use this control here to make the columns stretch across the page anyway. Okay, we've selected the columns. I'm going to remove the margin, top and bottom here, and actually the padding as well. We don't want that. So then it acts more like a background section. It's like now a background section with 2 bits. And then we will do background images here. So we'll choose a new image. And here we go. I've got 2 images ready here for the split layout. Insert this here, and I'll center it once again. And in this case, this might actually be a case where top left makes more sense because the face of the subject is in the top left. So if I anchor this image to the top left, that means that no matter how the thing resizes, this top left corner of the image is always going to be visible, which means that the face of the person in the picture is always going to be visible probably. So here, top left is probably a good choice. So I'll apply that, and then we have on the other side, on the column, another image. And here, as you can see from the thumbnail, here we have the face of the subject is more in the top center. So here probably makes sense to choose top center alignment. All right, then I want to get my button, and what I can actually do, this is a relatively recent feature as I'm recording this. If I drop a button in here, I can actually choose the template I saved before. I can choose that from the button itself. So it's just a bit more convenient. I'll duplicate this and add it on the other side. So this is just a call to action section, right? Maybe give the visitor a choice between 2 things to explore further. And then what we can do is, let's increase the size here of the columns. So I'll go to the columns themselves and increase the height to, I don't know, maybe 500 is maybe good here. And then center align the content. And I think that's pretty good. What we might need, and we'll see that in responsive, I think we'll probably have to tweak some things in responsive, but I'll do the responsive editing after we've finished the rest of the page. But yeah, there you go. That was actually a pretty simple build for a layout that ends up looking really nice. And once again, the no Photoshop thing here is that these images, these are basically just photographs. You don't have to isolate the background. These are just rectangular photographs. So you can replace that with other pictures. You don't have to do anything special to the pictures for them to fit this layout. Now, one thing I think we could do to make this look a bit better is we could what I'm noticing here is this button here, for example, just doesn't stand out really well. This one's better. So I think what we can do to just make the button pop a little bit more is we can put a color on top, which is just like 10% black. I'll do that on both sides, even though on the right side it's less needed. But that's just really subtle, right? It's a really subtle thing, but it just makes that button stand out a little bit more, and that is generally good. You want your calls to action to stand out. Now we're going to do an about the author section. I'll do columns here. These columns are inside the background section. I will put the author image over here, right aligned, I think, or maybe center aligned. Not sure yet. But yeah, this is our author image here. And then over here we'll have some text. So let's start. We'll have a line that says my name is. And let me make that, let me make that a bit darker again. And maybe a bit larger actually. And then we'll have some name, like, I don't know, Eliza Jacobs. Oops, like that. And I want to use this font, the name of which I've forgotten actually, but I want to use this fancy font here that we used. Great Vibes, there we go. So this is also about consistency again, right? I like to use a kind of a handwritten font for names, especially on a page like this. But I want to use the same one I've used before. I don't want to choose a different font each time. And also in general, we don't want to be loading too many fonts on a page. We can make this larger for sure, like this. And we should probably also give it a color. I think one of these colors it's probably too bright, yeah. But maybe this. So there we go. That's I'll make it a little smaller, but that's the basic idea, right? We make this stand out a bit and give it a personal touch by using kind of a handwritten style font. Then I'll add some text below here. This would be the actual about the author text. And I'm gonna go with 19 here again. I probably now that I'm getting to this point of the page, I'm thinking that I probably should have set the normal font size to 19. Doesn't matter. Okay, and we'll add some space here. Let's start with this. I think also on the columns, just in terms of spacing, I think I can move this apart a bit more. And for sure, I want more spacing on top, but actually I think this might do the trick, right? We do the vertical centering again. I think that's pretty much the result. I could have pushed this down with a top margin, but I might as well do it like this. Now, this text here, I want this to run less wide. And now here comes another kind of layout trick that we're going to do, that I'm going to place a content box below. I want this to be below the columns. And so first of all, let's remove this. And on the columns, let's remove the bottom spacing here, because we're actually going to move, we're going to make an overlapping effect here. So I'll give this a background color, and I'll use once again the same color that we've used many times before now. I want to restrict the width, and I want to move it to the right. And okay, so I want to restrict the width less because I want there to be an overlap effect here. So let's say 990. And I want to make it a certain height. So I want this box to be taller. Because basically what I'm going for is that I want this content box to look like it's a content box around this text, but with this kind of magazine layout thing again, right? So that it's not just exactly behind this text, it kind of overlaps stuff. So with it placed here, what I can then do is I can give it a negative margin until it sits here. And then we want to go into the advanced settings. We have a relative position set here already, so I'll reduce this z-index to 2. It wasn't enough yet, so let me select this again. Or actually, I'll have to check. So let me set this to 0 again. What we want is for this text to be on top of it. So I'll set this position, no, wrong menu, this position to relative, and I'll give it a z-index of 10, let's say. This one as well, I want this to be on top as well, so we'll do the same thing, relative 10. So these have a higher z-index value. And so now if I push this up here, that's what I was looking for right there. Now it's behind the text and behind the image. Now to make this look good, one thing I definitely have to do is I want to move this text further down. So like this-ish. And then maybe I can adjust the position of this a bit. And make it a little less tall. Maybe like this. All right, so that's more or less the effect I was going for. All right, next up we'll do kind of a divider and then a recent or a blog post gallery. And I'm going to use a similar subheading here, but not the exact same layout with the small divider at the bottom. Let's do something different. So I'll place this here between the background section and the thing before. So I don't want this to be in a section because I want this to go full width. We'll call this read our latest, and then the emphasized bit, blog posts. Now let's get a divider and place it on the left of this. That creates a column layout. And I want the fill color to be one of our saved colors here, 1 pixel wide. Then I'll duplicate that and place the same thing on the other side. So now we have a divider line on either side here. Now what I want to do is I will hold Control and move this inwards to make, let's say, 40% on either side, like this. Then on the columns, with the columns selected, I want to vertically center the line and the text. And this vertical centering doesn't really work yet because this is, once again, the theme adds some space here at the bottom of the heading. So I'll go to the columns, go to typography. This is the same thing we did before. We have an H2 here. I'll remove this space and now it is centered. So by using a column layout here, it actually creates the effect of kind of a divider line that is covered where the text is. And that looks kind of cool. So that's our next bit. Again, we'll add some spacing here. We definitely need more space between here, the top and the next thing. And then at the bottom, add some more space as well, maybe like this. All right. Next, we'll do a blog post gallery. And let me duplicate this section in case we need some more. And then let's start by adding a 3-column layout. So we're going to do a similar workflow here. We have 3 columns. And I'm going to, let me actually select this again. I'm going to remove some of this spacing here. And I'm going to put a content box inside the column. Let's start by placing an image inside the box. And we'll make it as wide as it will go in the box. And I want to remove the top and bottom spacing here. Underneath that, I want to have a heading 3. And I just want to make sure, and I'm checking the breadcrumbs here, I want to make sure that it's inside the same box here. Okay, so that it is, and so we have our heading 3, and this is the blog post title. I'll make that bold and center line it. Then I'm actually going to get this divider that we've already used a couple of times. I want basically the same divider and use it in here below the title. And then we can have some filler text, which, you know, could be this text right here. Why not? That we put here. Now, there's too much spacing here, so we'll get rid of that. Here, this should be maybe evenly spaced like this. What I also want to do, so first of all, let's add a frame. I'll select this content box and I'll add a frame around the whole thing. So we'll go to borders and corners. We want borders all around. I think maybe use the light color here and 1 pixel, no rounding, that's all fine. And then there's one more element I want to add, which is an icon. Before we do a bit of formatting here to change the spacing, because right now the text sticking to the edges like this, of course, does not look nice. So we'll fix that. But first, let's add an icon of a right pointing arrow. Let's make it a lot smaller, be like this. And I would like it actually to be white and have a black background. Maybe not entirely black. And then we need some inside padding. So I'll link the sides here and I'll just try something out. That's too much. 10 is maybe better, maybe 12. Yeah, like this. Okay. I don't want it to have top spacing like this. Oops. At the bottom, we want a bit of space. Maybe 20 was okay here. What I want to do at the top actually is I want to push it
so it overlaps the image, which right now it doesn't do yet because it's, well, it's below. So let me increase the Z index here. There we go. And then with position relative, what we can do, let's see if I place it over here. I think over here is good. Let me just, on position relative, let me choose any of these. So here you can move the item relative to its original position without interfering with other stuff in the page. So I think what we can do here is just move it in by maybe this much. Save that. I think the color is still a bit too dark for my taste. Now, what I would usually do is I would add on the content box, I would add inside padding on all sides. But, well, let's do it actually. So probably 20 inside padding would be good. So if I link up the sides and I do 20, and this happens. So this looks good on the text, but not on the image. So first of all, definitely at the top, we don't want this. Basically, it just doesn't look nice on the image with this, with these gaps on the side. So what we can do instead is I can keep the bottom padding. That one makes sense, but I'll set the others to 0. And what I'll do instead is I will add the padding on the text blocks, on the individual text blocks, because I want to make sure that they don't ever run to the edges like this here. So just add them here. And now you basically have the same effect in terms of the spacing inside this box. All right, now this image should be able, right, we can push it all the way to its full size again. And now we've got the desired effect. Okay, then one more thing. I'll select the content box containing everything again, and we'll go into the hover state. And then we will add a drop shadow. So let's add a drop shadow that points straight down. Distance, very small. And let's give it a bit more blur here. And make it a bit more subtle. Something like that. Let's see. So the way hover effects work is that basically when I hover on anything inside this box, it will apply the hover effect. What I could then also do is I could apply an action to this box right here. I could add a link action that links to the blog post. So now that we have this and it looks nice, I'll choose the content box, I'll duplicate it, place it in the next column, duplicate it again. Oops, that was the wrong thing. So I duplicated the image here instead of the whole box. So let's try it again. Here we go. And then I just replace the images, change the text, and change the links to finalize this. So now we have a pretty cool blog post gallery effect. Now we built this manually, and maybe you're thinking, well, wouldn't it be cool if I could do something like this with the post grid element, which dynamically updates the content and so on? Yes, that would be cool, and it's coming soon. So for sure, our goal is to make total editing like you see here and a lot more flexibility available in the post grid element. For now, we built it manually because you just don't have that feature yet. Now let's do a final call to action section on the page. So right here, we'll have another section with a dark background. I'm going to go with this color here and an image. This is a larger version of an image we've already used. We'll insert that. And I'm not sure about the alignment yet. Let's go with center for now. Okay, so we apply that, and I want to have an overlay that is something like this. And then, okay, then we can start adding content. Let's actually, before I add content, let's add some padding here, maybe 50 top and bottom. We might do more, but let's put some content in and see what it looks like. So I'll put a content box in here. And on this content box, I'll give it some inside padding right away. I'll also give it a border of this color made somewhat transparent, and we'll make it like a pretty thick border like this. And then here we'd have whatever our call to action is. So let me put a heading 2 in here. And sign up now. And so we'll make this white we'll have some text here maybe that advertises get your free offer thing, something about benefits. We'll make that white as well. And we could use, so we want to have a button in here as well. So we've got our button template that we can go for here again. We can use the same button as before. So this could be a, there we go. This could be our opt-in offer. So we could have a light box that opens on click of this button. And then on the other side here, we will add an image. So this is the typical thing where we'd have some kind of a freebie offer, and we have, actually let's keep that centered. We have an image that represents this offer that people can sign up for and download. All right, so this has created a column layout. So I put the other stuff. What happened here? The alignment was lost. Okay. Let me remove the top spacing here. And in fact, in the columns, I think this calls for vertical center alignment again. So for the vertical center alignment, the reason it doesn't look right now is because there is space at the bottom of these things, not at the top. That's why there's less space here between the top of the box and the stuff, and the bottom of the box and the stuff. So I'm going to go and remove the bottom spacing here as well. I do want to add, though, I want to add bottom spacing here. To keep things consistent, let me remove the top spacing and add bottom spacing here instead. I think that looks decent. I think we can also move it over a bit. And then let's see, okay, here we have even spacing, but I think we can get rid of that too. This is on the columns, it's on the columns layout itself. All right, and there we go with our call to action. And the final thing we will put here in the final section is a footer. So this is pretty simple. We will make the background here. We'll make that almost but not quite black. Then we will drop a line of text in it. And we'll just paste in, this could be our text here. And we'll make this smaller. And we'll add some top and bottom padding to the section. And so we could link up, whatever we need to link up here. And then that is pretty much it. I think this could take a bit more spacing here as well. Make this a bit more generously sized. And then that is pretty much it. Oh, we definitely need more space here between this bit and the next section. So let's just add some white space here. And there we go. We have the layout of our page created. Next step is to go into responsive editing. So let's see what needs to be done here to make this work. So right away on the tablet view, this still looks good. I don't think this needs any editing at the top here. This, because we don't have an overlap here with the image anymore, there's too much space at the top, so we can reduce that. So to remember, this space was added to compensate for an image that overlaps, but because it resizes, that's not the case anymore. But this looks good. This, we've already taken care of the responsiveness. This also looks good. Here, we've already done responsive stuff as well. This here also looks fine. In this case, the way the boxes stack is 2 and 1, but I think that's okay. And we can change that. So if you wanted to change how this behaves, you can select the columns and you can either, well, you can make them not wrap, but I don't think there's enough space here for this. That looks too cramped. You can also change the width, the minimum width they're allowed to go. So if you prefer this here, you just increase this minimum width. But I think this was actually quite good. We can keep this. All right, this bit here, here we should add some padding because these buttons are too close together now. So I'm gonna add the padding on the full view here. And let's just say 20 on each side. In both the columns, this should take care of what we just saw before. Oh, it doesn't. It doesn't because the button has a larger size than I thought. Okay, so we got to do something about this button here as well, because basically it has a width that is greater than the width of this section here. So there's a couple of things we could do. We could choose the columns here, and we could make the columns wrap and then go like this instead, right? Which looks pretty good. The other thing we can do is we can change the button size or the text size inside the button. So I think that's what I'll go for here. So I'll choose the button, and in typography, I should use this. And then we can also reduce the button width. I think that looks decent. So we have a button width of 320 and a font size of 20 as well. Apply the same thing here. Font size 20, button width 320. So I think that's a good solution. Here this also still looks good, but we need more space. Let me check the full view again. Right, I think we should add more space here as well. So if we take this, this entire section here, let's add some space here. I think we can use that on the larger view as well. All right, so this still looks okay. Here, this needs some padding on the side. Let's also apply that because I don't want it to stick right to the edge of the box here, right? So I think that's also something we can correct on the large view right away. Let me just add 20 pixel padding here. And that looks much nicer already. Okay, rest still looks good. This looks good. Here, this is pretty interesting. We have these images don't really fit the boxes anymore. So what can we do? Well, if you look at the image, it is 383 pixels wide. We could get this box here. We could set this to 383 and center align it. And then do that on all of them. So 383. So basically I'm just saying, okay, this box cannot be wider. Actually, hold on, I'm making a mistake here. Let me undo that. What I'll do instead, actually, I'll do this on the desktop view right away. So I'll do this content box here. Here on the maximum width, let me set this to 383 and center align. And so I should have done that before duplicating, but never mind. Because I want to make sure that, you know, on any size in between these two preview sizes, that it doesn't stretch out the way we saw before. So I'm going to apply this change here, the fix on the large size already, and not only on the tablet size. So now this is what we get, and I think that's pretty good. And then next up we have, well, we have the call to action. That also still looks good. Okay, so tablet view is done. So then let's go back to the top and check out the mobile view. So here on the menu, I'll choose the column, and in typography, I will center align it. Oh, I made a mistake. So the reason I can't align this, I can't center align this menu is because I inline right aligned it, and an inline change will override a container level sidebar change. So how do I fix that? Let me see. If I go to the desktop here, so I'm actually going to redo this. The way I should have done this is put the text in here, home, about, blog. So I should have put the text in here like this, and instead of choosing the alignment here, select the column that contains it and right align it here, because that allows me to then change this. So in tablet view it looks fine, and then in mobile view now I can center align it. So that's the difference between applying typography changes on a container level versus inline. So the image here as well, we can basically do the same for the image. We're going to center align that, and then that looks pretty good. Here we should definitely reduce the font size of this, and then maybe have a bit less space below. Here we have a similar button issue that we've seen before. Maybe we can just, let's make it a bit smaller and also reduce the font size. And then here I think we should make this image smaller. And because we have the overlap again, we can add some space back here. There we go. All right, so our top section is looking good. benefits section is also looking good. The quote here, okay, this is looking too cramped now. So what I'll do is on this box, I will reduce the side padding. So we have less side padding here, and I'll just reduce the font size as well. I think this will definitely look better like this. All right, here I think we've already done the responsiveness as well. This also looks good. Here, these have now stacked, and again, but the button looks too wide again. So let's, I think, further reduce the font size. So let's say 17, and then button width, let's say 300. All right, so I'll do the same here as well. Got 17 and 300. Next, about the author, this looks more or less fine. I think we can reduce the size of this here and center align it. Actually, no, let's not center align it because it goes better with the text here if it's left aligned. And then, let's see. I want it to be less space at the top here. And I'm going to add some padding on the right and the left of this text. All right, then let's choose our box here and move it up a bit. That looks good. Okay, then this also looks good. Here we need to go into our content boxes again, and I'll change the width here to 100%. Because right now they're basically too wide. So let me just change that to 100 so they're allowed to go narrower again. All right, so that looks good. And then here once again, we've got a button text size to change. I think 17, what do we say? 17 and 300 should probably work here as well, but let's see. No, 300 is too wide because there's too much space here. So let's reduce that a bit, give everything inside this box a bit more room to breathe. And then here, yeah, I think we have to reduce this. I'll center align the button and then reduce the button text size till it fits on one line again. And also let's add a bit of space below here to separate it from this image a bit more. And then there we go. That is our mobile editing done as well. So there we go. As you can see, we've used some interesting layout choices. We have a lot of overlapping effects. We have interesting uses of gradients and such to arrive at a very nicely styled page.
And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Like I said, this landing page, as well as several other landing pages in the same style, are available right now in the Thrive Architect plugin for WordPress. Let me know what you think of this extensive, in-depth tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you'd like to see more like this, or if you have suggestions of what you would like to see tutorials about, just leave a comment below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.